Segment number 16 of the Instant Reaction podcast right here on the Eastern Observer is presented by Black Cats NYC alongside my man Mike Szabo. I'm Jair Davis. We are blessed to be joined by Josh Adams and Jake Zimmer of College Hoops Digest. Fellas, good to see you. Jake Zimmer, it's been a long time, my friend. How is everything going up in your region of the country?
You know, I couldn't be better. There's the two best Rhode Island teams have gone to the dance. And I say that very strategically because there are two also, some call them what you want elsewhere in the state, in Rhode Island and Brown. But the Bryant Bulldogs and the Providence Friars are dancing. This is exciting stuff. Rhode Island is on a high right now. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I mean, listen, all I can tell you is right now, there we go. NEC represent right here. That's for sure. So great job to the Bryant Bulldogs. Josh Adams, good to see you again. It's only been about, 72 hours since I last saw you. And how are things on your side of the river?
Well, like I told you, Joey, my immune system wasn't ready to be in an arena with 20,000 people for the last 2 days. So I got a nice little head cold going on, but excited for the tournament to start. Ironically, basically every team that we cover will probably be in San Diego. So it's one of those weird coincidences. But to all our newspaper brethren that are about to have a 4-day vacation in San Diego, aloha. Have a good time. It'll be fun. We'll be back here schlepping in New York, New Jersey.
I think you're a bit too far west for aloha, though.
Yeah, well,
you get some
anywhere past Mississippi, I'm going to go aloha,
Yeah, aloha, mahalo, anything along those lines. Oh,
yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Mike Szabo, good to see you, sir. How are things on your side of Queens?
Doing well, same old, same old. Can't wait for this week to begin with the NCAA tournament, of course. As we always say, this is March, is the best time of year. What better?
So, what's funny, Jake? We were talking about, obviously, how you're talking about Rhode Island is on a high. Me and Mike Szabo were actually laughing our pants off yesterday when St. John's was not even selected into the NIT.
Oh, we're going there.
And, we are absolutely going there. And we are going to start off this pre-season or this pre-tournament show with a little bit of laughter because you say to yourself that they put in a bid to host, they put in something along those lines. It won't be long, of course, but they didn't get selected, and their season comes to an absolute close, and that's exactly where we're going to leave it off as because we've got a ton to talk about with them, but other teams have been a little bit more deserving of the dance, and that's who is going to be getting our attention here tonight. But, of course, like I said, it just had to be thrown in. But, guys, we're going to be talking about, of course, UConn, Rutgers, Marquette, Bryant, Seton Hall, Villanova, Creighton, Providence, and, of course, we're going to be having our Final Four predictions as well here on the Instant Reaction podcast. Well, of course, we're going to start off with the first four contest that's going to start in a couple of days on Wednesday night. That's going to be Wright State and Bryant. And of course, Jake Zimmer, you are a big Bryant guy. You're a big Rhode Island guy. And of course, like we said just a few moments ago, we are NEC representing here on the Instant Reaction. And it's pretty cool. Bryant gets their first trip to the NCAA tournament. They'll be taking on Wright State. 21-13, 22-9 for Bryant. Peter Kiss, Charles Pride, it's absolutely unbelievable, and they just continue to show in and show out on a nightly basis. And what Jared Grasso has done this season is really, really remarkable.
Yeah, I'm right with you, and there's a lot of talk about what Bryant was beforehand, right? We all know the 3-28 story. We all know the gym was vacated, right? I want to qualify what I'm about to say with, the transition for a school to go Division I. You guys know this. You're in the D2 and D3 circuits as well. It is very arduous to have to do that, right? So it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, for Tim O'Shea to kind of walk in there, have the success that he did have originally. He went through something very similar when he came to Bryant. He was Bryant's first head coach back in, 2008? It must have been at the Division I level. But the Bulldogs went 20-99 to start off those years, right? They had 3 really good years in between. They went to the NEC quarterfinal. They had some excellent games against Sacred Heart, and they had winning seasons, right? So it's not that they had to necessarily gut the culture out of Bryant, rebuild it from ground up, and try to just create something from nothing. But that's not to diminish the work Grasso's done. He had a great infrastructure around him of the athletic staff, the sort of the right facilities in place to say, here you go, here's our resources, now go do your thing with the culture, do your thing with, recruiting professional basketball players, basketball players that want to go pro down the road, right? And he made good on that promise. He stood up there, I'll never forget it. It was a snowy day, early April 2018. He said, this program is going to cut down some nets and it's going to happen quicker than you think. And I kind of chuckled, right? Every coach says, you got to expect to win. You have to go out with the mindset that you're going to be a competitor and win championships and things like that. And I don't want to say it was, not well received, but it was a stretch from going 3-28. And here we are 4 years later. The man delivered on his promise, went out and recruited a bunch of guys that bought in, had the nation's leading scoring duo in Peter Kiss and Charles Pride. Guys, can you imagine 42 points a game between the two of them? 25.1 for Kiss, over 18 for Pride. Pride's a 6'4" wing guard, and he leads the team with 9 rebounds, too. That doesn't tell you anything about the grit and composure of this Bryant Bulldogs team. I'm not quite sure what does. So very much looking forward to a first 4 matchup with a date to Arizona on the line.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be something else. Of course, Bryant Wright State, the winner of that contest, will be taking on 31-3, the number 1 overall, or the number 1 seed in the South region in Arizona. And of course, they're missing one of their best players as well. But again, do not sleep on Arizona and do not sleep on really their opponent, whoever it may be, Bryant or Wright State. Again, a lot of folks continue to say that, whoever is in the first 4, they don't really have a chance to get out of that number 1 overall, or that number 1 seeded team. But we saw it last year where UCLA, if I'm not mistaken, they played in the first 4. They eventually made it all the way down. Pretty good stuff. Is there a chance?
Brian Anderson's famous call was UCLA from the first 4 to the final 4. Let it live and let it ring.
If I'm not mistaken, VCU with Shaka Smart was a first 4 team too that went to the final 4. Am I right on that?
Yeah, I think that does sound about right. Yeah,
that
was a few years ago.
Yeah.
2011, yeah.
Unbelievable stuff. But what Jared Grasso has done, fellas, is truly remarkable. And now with obvious some chatter with them, or even another NEC school going into a different conference, into the America East, into the MAC. It's really amazing to see what this institution has done. And going up against the team that had high hopes in Wagner, they simply did not show up in that NEC championship game. And all antics aside, of course, Bryant really played to the best of their ability, and they just stepped all over Wagner. Jake, can you attest a little bit more to that?
Yeah, a big piece, as was talking through the game plan before the game with a couple of folks close to the program, it was shut down Alex Morales, right? Yeah. We saw what Morales had done all year. He won the NEC Player of the Year for a good reason, right? Regardless of who should have won it, which we clearly saw after the game. Yeah. Morales was about the best defensive player you could have asked for. He made the big shots. He was lethal from the interior, and he could make it rain from 3 if he needed to. So he gave the Bulldogs quite a bit of labor the first time inside Chase Athletic Center, which was back, February 26th, only a couple of weeks ago. When the game plan was being made this time around, he was the focal point. And when I say, folks, on the record, the focal point, a good chunk of the preparation was, how do we stop Alex Morales from doing what he does? Well, it worked. What was it, 38-12 at halftime, to my knowledge? I think, trying to remember, because sadly the events afterwards marred. I have no concept. I don't even know what the score was. I think it was 70-43 as a final. But,
in that range, give or take.
Yeah, right. And we'll save that for maybe another episode.
Exactly.
But they shut him down. They did what they needed to do. Alex Morales didn't have a field goal, guys. And when you're Player of the year doesn't have a field goal. That's a recipe for success. They came out, they set the pace, they set the tempo, they played really aggressive defense on all facets, beyond the arc and in the interior. That's what made this Bryant Bulldogs program tick last Tuesday, and that's their path to success against Wright State as well, and even beyond. We're going to have to see. They need to play a competitive enough defensive game when they go up against, potentially a date with Arizona, potentially somebody better than that. You have to look to just our pace. We outrun you guys, basically.
Now, is it tough, obviously, with these first four teams going from Smithfield to Dayton, then potentially going up against the one-seeded all the way out and across the country in San Diego? How much wear and tear, guys, does that take on a team, especially one that has never been to the dance before? Anyone want to take a crack at it?
Yeah, I'm curious to see what Josh has to say after this. But, from my knowledge, right, we interviewed America's favorite walk-on, Timmy Kiggins, a couple of days ago from Bryant. And, we asked him, would you rather play in Dayton? Would you rather go, take on the number one seed? He said, well, it would suck to lose in Dayton, right? So I think the only thing, Joey, I'll approach this from a tactical gameplay perspective. If you play a team like Arizona or Gonzaga and you're the 16 seed, you know what the Zags' game plan is. You know what Arizona's game plan is. It's to overwhelm you. They've got big, scary guys that play scary, timid, intimidating defense. They want to clamp you down and just intimidate you with their athleticism, right? Now, this is a game that Wright State's favored by, I don't know, I think the books had it at 2 last time we checked, maybe 3. So now you really have to out-strategize Wright State. You have to, you have to do what you've been doing all year, basically, with the exception of bye games. So I will say, very different just in terms of gameplay. The wear and tear, I guess that remains to be seen. And I'm curious, Josh, what your years of coverage you kind of have to say about the first four versus the high seeds.
Well, what I don't like about how the NCAA sets up this first four is I really don't think that conference tournament winners should have to play in the first four. I think that's very unfair. It really is. You won your conference tournament. You should be able to play in the NCAA tournament without this having to go to Dayton type thing. It's the bubble teams, in my opinion, that should be able. All bubble teams should be playing in the first four, not conference winners or conference tournament winners. I think it goes against the whole premise of the NCAA tournament of you win your conference tournament, you play in the whole thing. This kind of lead up in Dayton to playing a one seed, I don't think it's fair. I really don't. I think this should be all bubble teams. And in terms of wear and tear, of course, because what happens is as soon as Brian or Wright State wins, what happens? They do their interview, get on a private plane, go straight across the country to San Diego, have a day of practice, a different time zone. It's almost an impossible task, but that's what the NCAA has for these teams, and it's not fair. It's a lot of wear and tear in a few days, but that's what this season's all about. And the flip side is, well, if Brian wins, well, they won an NCAA tournament game.
Yeah,
I can see that's like the spin zone on it, but at the same time, I mean, yes and no, I guess, because it was the first four games. So I don't know. I guess it depends how you look at it. To me, Brian should be flying out to San Diego right now and getting the proper practice in before Arizona. Because let's face it, like playing Arizona, like you should have as much prep time as you possibly could have before playing, the number one or two best team in the nation. My take on it, please.
It's so true also, because it's funny, Josh, that you bring up about, the time difference, flying cross country, and in between those 2 days, you have to go play in Ohio, basically, right in the middle, or actually a quarter of the way across the country for Rhode Island. We got a chance to listen to, and actually, it's going to be our next team that we're going to talk about is Seton Hall. We were on a pre-tournament press conference call yesterday with Kevin Willard, and something that he had said was that he's extremely grateful that they're playing in that Friday late tip because of daylight savings for starters, and also because they're flying all the way out to San Diego. It gives them an extra day to get themselves acclimated to that time change. In addition, of course, to daylight savings as well. And he emphasized that twice, too, in about a span of, I think, a 30-second answer. So I guess that really must make a difference when you are flying cross country. So we'll see what happens, not only with Seton Hall, but also with Bryant too, because their next opponent would be Arizona if they were to come away with a Wright State victory on Wednesday out in Dayton. But guys, let's keep on moving forward here. And of course, as we did say, Seton Hall is the next team that we are going to focus on. They are just below Arizona, Wright State, and Bryant in the South Regional bracket. They will be going up against the TCU Horned Frogs. The 8-9 game, of course, that dreaded game, Josh, that we were talking about, you and I, a few days ago at Madison Square Garden, that it's possible that Seton Hall could potentially be playing in that game. And we know from experience that that's not one that Seton Hall is, really obviously wants to play in. They were projected as high as 7 or 6 in that range, and they were landed and given that 8-9 game. But it looks as if, though, this season might just be a little different. They match up pretty well against TCU. They
do, and when you were sort of looking at the potential matchups, you started to see them sort of slide in the bracket matrix from 7-10 to the 8-1 as upsets were happening within the conference tournament. So then you go, all right, 1 through, if they're going to be in the 8-9, what's the best case and what's the worst case scenario? To me, the worst case scenario would have been the 8-9 in Fort Worth, and then playing Baylor at 1, because you're just finished if you have to go to Texas and then you have to go play, match up in the 8-9, probably Memphis or someone like that, and then play Baylor at 1. Forget it. You might not get out of it. But this is actually a favorable matchup against TCU. These two teams match up very well with one another. With TCU, they're playing Jamie Dixon, who's no stranger to the Big East, as he was the coach of Pitt for how long when Pitt was in the Big East. Yeah. Actually, that said, Jamie Dixon's record against Seton Hall at Pitt was 7-4. So, he's got a winning record against Seton Hall in his career. Now, whether that means anything in 2022, I don't know. He's been at TCU for a while now. He's a TCU alum. So, but the Horned Frogs don't exactly have like a storied history in the tournament. I believe they haven't won an NCAA tournament game since 1987. So that's a long stretch for you don't think of TCU as a mediocre program in football or basketball, but facts are facts. They haven't won a tournament game since 87. It's nice. The Pirates are back. There was a 1-year hiatus there. There's the COVID, the COVID cancellation. Then last year they didn't make it. They just couldn't get it together. But they're back. They're back in the tournament. And, you don't want to look past TCU. I don't want to, because, again, they haven't matched up. I believe Seton Hall's 1.5 to a 2-point favor from what I've seen. So it's an even matchup, so you don't want to look too far ahead to Arizona. And who knows, Bryant could pull off the upset, and it could be a Bryant-Seton Hall game in San Diego.
That's big ticket television. Josh, I tried to interrupt this slander, but I realized I was on mute. TCU won the NIT in 2017, so that slander, man. That counts.
Well, that's something, I guess. My research didn't lead me down the NIT rabbit hole, so I apologize for that.
That's probably better off that way.
Yeah, I was looking. My Google search did not include NIT, so there's that. But in terms of like the one thing they do have, both TCU and Seton Hall have like opponents here. TCU played Georgetown. Obviously, Seton Hall played Georgetown. TCU beat Georgetown by 7. TCU played Texas twice, got swept in the regular season. But they did come back from 20 down in the Big 12 tournament to beat Texas in the Big 12 tournament. Seton Hall in the Big 12 Big East Challenge beat Texas at the Prudential Center. So, again, read the tea leaves. Like Seton Hall beat Georgetown by 7 points last time they played. So, NCAA knew what they were doing here. This is why this is the last matchup on that Friday night. Like they won a good game here, and I think you're going to get it. I think the first team to 70 probably wins this game.
Oh, first team to 70. That sounds awfully familiar. We're playing the first team to a certain point. Guys, let's get Mike Szabo involved in here. Mike, you obviously got a chance to see Seton Hall and UConn in that last game a couple of days ago, or what was about, I don't know, 3 or 4 days ago, when they were taken down. Do you see Seton Hall potentially taking this 8-9 game? And from what we know, Seton Hall has, they've had trouble in these 8-9 games in the past. They come away with the victory. They lose the following year. But it's tough, especially no Bryce Aiken the rest of the way. And also in that pre-tournament press conference, Adam Zagoria did ask, he's like, I know the answer, but Kevin, is there a chance that Bryce Aiken could come back? And his answer was chuckling, no. Mike, what do you think here?
Yeah, I think it's a really good matchup for Seton Hall and TCU. I think the big part of it is where Seton Hall is really going to start missing Bryce Aiken in these sort of games. I think Kevin Willard, as always, has adjusted well over the years and, has a really good grasp on his team and did well to have a great charge through February, being a little bit undermanned at the point guard spot. And a couple weeks ago in the regular season finale, getting a big win over Creighton with Kadari Richmond on the bench with the wrist injury for most of the time. Yeah. Richmond hasn't been 100%. They in the Big East tournament, they kind of looked up and down, really struggled against UConn's interior defense, their length. So I think this is going to be a really even matchup. I wouldn't be surprised if TCU would come out with the win. I wouldn't be surprised if Seton Hall will be able to pull it out. 8-9s in terms of the bracketology, trying to predict it out. I remember like a stat when I was prepping, like making a bracket a couple of years ago. Number 9 seeds win this matchup like 55% of the time. So a slight upset potential with TCU, but I think this is going to be a really good game.
Jake Zimmer, obviously, there is a possibility that Bryant could play Seton Hall. Very, very slim chance, but you never know. It could happen. Is there a chance that we see you fly out to the West Coast for that game? You and Josh?
I had myself muted again. Sorry. I'll tell you what, probably good because I was about to reconsider what I was man. If that happens, I might have to fly out. I might have to. That's provided because I've got a place to stay in San Diego if I need it. As long as there was a spot waiting for me, the crappy thing is I might have to wait until they play Villanova in the Elite Eight. Or Houston in the Sweet 16, either one.
Oh my God! Well, I mean, hey, listen,
it's for the stars, aren't we?
Well, just by looking at the upper right quadrant here, Bryant would have to go through Arizona, Seton Hall, Illinois, potentially, Michigan, Tennessee, Ohio State, potentially Sister Jean. And then also, of course, get to play Villanova.
Yeah, that's a lot of juice. That's a lot.
We're really having high hopes here.
Now I can't even say Villanova gets through that.
I mean, hey, listen. But the moment you go up against Sister Jean, it's a wrap.
All bets are off because God's on her side. Or Villanova. What other Catholic can someone crunch the numbers? We'll get the percentages of Catholic schools to advance. Perfect. Done. We'll piece together from there.
You're really you're missing Longwood in this bracket as well.
You're
the ultimate sort of college hoops digest matchup would probably be a Bryant Longwood Elite 8 match, which would blow our big South writer Brian Wilmer's head wide open. I think
college basketball would just break at that point.
Yeah, I believe so.
This sport is doomed if Bryant Longwood play in the Elite 8. I'm sorry.
It's so true. It's so true. Jake, with this Seton Hall matchup, Seton Hall TCU, obviously that 8-9 contest, just like what we had asked Mike, it's I don't want to call it a doomsday scenario for Seton Hall, but they continuously get these 8-9 matchups, one of the hardest in all of March Madness.
Right, and here's the thing about TCU. Again, it's a mixed bag. what I'm a bit worried about is they have almost the exact same resume as Seton Hall does. You look at Ken Pom, and both these teams are, Seton Hall's 75 offense, TCU's 80. TCU defense is 24, Seton Hall's 26, right? I'm worried about the glass for Seton Hall. TCU is an excellent offensive rebounding team. They give themselves more chances. They haven't done much with them, with the exception of a couple of good games on the resume that I won't repeat. But, Seton Hall, as you fellas know, they have this stretch of going cold defensively sometimes. And, in all facets of the game, sometimes they just go cold, right? They can't be doing that against TCU. You can't give the Horned Frogs more chances than they deserve to win the game. So I'm watching the front court in this game, and I think it'll be a pretty telling story for Seton Hall.
Well, and that's actually the perfect segue for Josh Adams, because Josh, when you and I were doing our recaps from the floor of Madison Square Garden, we brought up a few times about the rebounding issues for Seton Hall. First up against Georgetown, of course, they were out-rebounded 48-34 against Georgetown. And then against UConn, they were out-rebounded 46-33. So do you see that as a problem? For you, Josh, who's covered Seton Hall longer than we have. What does experience say here? With what Kevin Willard has to go out to San Diego with.
Well, Angel Delgado ain't walking through that door, folks. As Rick Pitino would like to say. Seton Hall didn't know how good they had it when they had a rebounding machine like Delgado. It's always funny. I think a lot of rebounds means there's a lot of bad shooting going on. So maybe one begets another there. In terms of rebounding, it's weird because UConn's an outstanding rebounding team. So, when you're going against Sonogo and Watley and guys like that. So it's understandable, I think, against UConn. Plus, they were gassed in that game. Georgetown, on the other hand, there's really no excuse for it, because you do have Seton Hall has size. They have Yetna, they have Rhode, they have Obiagu, they have Jackson, they have Samuel. There's no reason why they should not get boards. But again, that's a lot of rebounding opportunities, which means there's a lot of bad shooting going on. So it is worrisome. As Jake said, TCU is a very good rebounding team. So the thing is that both these teams they're neither particularly great at shooting. So there's going to be opportunities at both ends. And the thing is to keep their most efficient rebounding when you have Yetna on the floor and when you have Obiagu on the floor. So they need to keep those guys out of foul trouble, not have them gassed. Again, this is where a 10 o'clock game kind of worries me, because you saw, Joey, that you and I saw against Georgetown, when the team's waiting around, that was a late game, quarterfinal Thursday. That was the 9:30 game. And it's tough to maintain energy at 9:30. It really is. You're going to come out flat. You've been waiting around all day to play. Now let's take 9:30. Let's add on 3 hours time difference. So they're essentially going to be starting this game around 11:30 midnight Eastern time. I'm really worried that that's going to mess Seton Hall up. I remember the game they had. It was the final Friday game. Again, I'm sounding old manish because of my memory, but they played the last Friday game against Gonzaga after they won the Big East tournament in 2017, and they just came out absolutely flat. They just seem to always get these types of start times in the NCAA tournament. So the good part is that TCU isn't particularly adept at offense and taking advantage of them. So again, it's a race to 70, but man, the guy who has to hit the shots right away is Jameer Harris, and as well Miles Cale. Cale's defense has been fantastic, but offensive wise, when he starts hitting 3-pointers, it really kind of is the spark in the engine that gets them going. So it's up to him. It's up to Cale. And also to have Harris hit a couple threes. But yeah, it's really this start time is just not optimal when it comes to Pirates basketball. It's just so tough to get the engine going that late at night.
And also, too, again, Miles Cale led the way with 17 points in that, obviously, a 10-point loss. Really, if you look back at that game or watch that game, no one would have thought it would have been a 10-point loss. Everyone would have probably thought it would have been a 20, 25-point loss the way that they played that night. And Miles Cale kept them in that contest. But we'll see. They're right now, again, slated in the 8-9 game. They'll be projected start time 9:57 Eastern time on Friday night. They are in the upper right quadrant in the South region. The winner of Seton Hall TCU would potentially play Arizona, Wright State, or Bryant. Again, dream scenario for Jake Zimmer is Bryant Seton Hall. That would be
playing Arizona. Let me get it on the record.
That would be. Hey, listen.
I hope I don't have the Bryant people.
How dare you? How dare you? Huh?
Because there are some that really believe Bryant can win. And that's all I'll say about I wouldn't doubt it, but Arizona's in my bracket. That's what I'm doing here.
Yeah. Well, I won't show you my bracket just yet. We'll be talking about our Final Four predictions later on in the instant reaction. But moving down the upper right quadrant, down still in the South region, all the way to the 2:15 game, Villanova and Delaware. That one's on the bottom of the of quadrant number 1. Villanova, Delaware. That game will be played on March 18th, which if I'm not mistaken, that is Friday. We will say, I believe that's in the afternoon out in Pittsburgh. So Villanova and Delaware, that's in terms of home court advantage, we expect it to be Villanova, of course, but still not a far drive for Delaware either. Start off with Jake Zimmer here. Villanova, again, they won the Big East tournament. And the best part too, also, a few days ago when they won against St. John's by 1 point, 66-65. They had Eric Dixon still come out. He was throwing up all day. He had a stomach virus. Jermaine Samuels, when Josh and we were talking about the magician of a chiropractor come up from Philadelphia that day. We'll leave it at that, of course. But what do you think with this Villanova Delaware game? The winner of this contest would be playing either Sister Jean or Chris Holtman.
Yeah, they're playing. Villanova right now is at an interesting state, right? I think they've shown glimpses, guys, and you saw them at Madison Square Garden where you're like, oh, that's the Villanova that's showing up this week, right? They're going to lose to St. John's and they'll have to test their luck. And then all of a sudden, they go back and forth in what I think was a candidate for probably top 10 game of the year in the Big East against UConn. Back and forth, really close fight. UConn's in it until the last possession. And then they, make haste of Creighton almost, right? I think it was a good game, but maybe a good second half anyway, kind of a snooze fest in the first. When Villanova plays the way that they want to, there's not a whole lot of teams that are beating them. So that being said, they need to do the right prep work. They need to come up with a game plan to stop two guys, in my opinion. Jameer Nelson's number one. I think he actually had a pretty good year at George Washington last year. He got some burn. They brought in, I think, 3 point guards, one of which is Tyler Brailsford, who transferred up to Bryant now. And Nelson ended up getting a bulk of the minutes there. He's shown out this year. He's at a pretty good year, has started a good chunk. But another one is Jair Davis, former Providence Friar as well, who's down with the Delaware Blue Hens. Big guy. Really wish it worked out for him in Friartown. He's 6'7". I'm nearly certain he won the first year of the year in the CAA this year. Really good asset to the Delaware program. I think those are two guys that you prep for. You cut them off, you stop Delaware from running the actions that they normally can, and you play that big scary defense that Villanova does, right? If they move the ball efficiently like they normally do, and they fire up Gillespie's dishing out the ball, they're freeing up Justin Moore. He finishes with something over 15 points. I got to think this is a runaway here for Villanova. So I like where the team's at right now. And I think once you get past Delaware, this is some good competition the rest of the way out, folks. You play either Chris Holtman or Drew Valentine from Loyola. And then you've got potentially Tennessee or Colorado State. And then you got potentially, Arizona, Illinois, or the likes of one of those groups. So this is some good ball. I think Villanova hangs with every single one of those teams, though, and you could very well hear their name called Final Four.
Joey just had to bring up that St. John's game. He just had to bring that one up.
Listen, and it's funny because, we bring that contest up because at one point, St. John's had a 7-point lead at halftime, 30-23, and then all of a sudden, one little Posh Alexander charge turns into a 17-2 run for Villanova, and they never look back. St. John stayed in that game, of course, Mike. You were on the call for that for student radio.
Yeah, that's going to sting a lot of St. John's fans.
It is for sure, but that's okay. Listen, they're not even in the NIT.
Not even in anything.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the big thing to me though is that with Villanova, it kind of scares me a little bit to see when they're not up to par on their 3-point shooting. And this is something I want to go to Josh Adams with right after Mike. When their 3-point shooting is not getting hot rather quickly, they're falling behind a little bit. They also can't, they're trying to, do a, down even in the front court too, they have a little bit of issues when it's not Eric Dixon or it's not Jermaine Samuels. What do you see here with Villanova? Is there any front court issues, anything along those lines, or is just experience going to take them through this upper right quadrant?
No, I think experience will take them through it because, you saw throughout the Big East tournament, not just this fateful St. John's game, where they went through cold stretches a lot offensively with especially 3-point shooting wise, but their defense would stand strong and would be able to leave them that margin of error per se offensively. And then Villanova being Villanova and the well-coached and cultured team that Jay Wright has them at would eventually start making those shots. Gillespie starts making shots. Caleb Daniels has been supremely underrated, in my opinion. Justin Moore, of course, we all know about him. And I think Samuels in the front court is even more important. I think Dixon in some of the games in the Big East tournament, certainly against St. John's, was forced off because of pace of play, basically forced a little bit into a non-factor, certainly provides a lot of rebounding. But this matchup, I think Villanova, I think easily gets with the Delaware. I know a lot of friends, a couple of friends from high school and whatnot, go to Delaware, and they're absolutely ecstatic at the year they've had. Both the men's and women's programs winning the CAA championship, both going dancing. So they've had great years, but at least for the men's team, it's going to come to a halt here against Villanova. I think they may. I think Delaware may, like in the first 5 minutes, may shock a bit of people, like get out to a hot start, and then it all goes back to what we predict. Villanova goes through. I think Villanova is in for a massive run in this tournament. This is not Jay Wright's one of Jay Wright's more talented teams than in recent years, but they're well coached. They when they turn it on, when you have the experience of Gillespie and Moore and Slater, and it goes all the way around, they know what they need to do in certain situations. They've been here, they've been there, they've done that. I think they go to the Elite Eight to set up a great match with Arizona.
Well, I'll tell you this much, Josh Adams. Colin Gillespie has been in college as long as I have. Difference is, though, he's a little bit more successful than I am. So, with that being said, also, in addition to what Gillespie...
But not as good looking, Joey.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You're lying to me, Josh. I appreciate that.
Yep.
But, all joking aside, though, Brandon Slater is another one, too, who's really turned up that defense. And this is a Villanova defense that we have not seen really in recent seasons, but we have seen it in the national championship runs.
Oh, absolutely. Slater's one of those weird cases where the ball seems to have been finding him towards the end of the games, especially in the Big East tournament. Slater, had a huge block against UConn, huge rebound and 3-point play and free throws against St. John's, and kind of keep bringing up that St. John's game. I apologize, Mike. It just seems to happen. It just seems to happen like that. Look, I don't have any animosity towards Jay Wright or Villanova like a lot of Big East people do. I really do appreciate what that program brings to the conference and everything else. And Jay's has been nothing but a class act in press conferences every time I've sat in one. And I don't have a rooting interest in pretty much any program, but this year I don't have the same kind of feeling that Villanova can make the kind of run that you expect, because I don't think they're deep enough this season. And I think with Samuels, like you said, with the chiropractor, I mean, Samuels looked just fine to me. So whatever this magic chiropractor they brought up from Philadelphia, I need his number, because that's certainly for my back. But Gillespie's a hell of a player. He's a hell of a point guard. The one thing, I don't have a soft spot for point guards, and Gillespie's just an expert at drawing. Being able to kind of drive in the lane, draw a foul, get to the free throw line, make that extra pass. He's a fantastic point guard, and Samuels is great. Especially in the post. Samuels is great at backing guys down and being able to drop step and get a layup. Both those guys are phenomenal, but I just think, especially in this bracket in the South, I mean, this is murderer's row. This bracket is just there's taking a look at it. I mean, Arizona could win the national championship. To me, Tennessee could win the national championship. Tennessee is fantastic. If you watched any of the SEC tournament, Tennessee is really good. And, Houston's really good this year too. I was watching them. The Kelvin Sampson team. If Villanova was in the East, I'd say they'd have a fighting chance. But this year in this bracket, I just don't see it. Arizona's too deep. They're too deep, and Tennessee, frankly, is too athletic. So I'd put Arizona or Tennessee over them in this bracket.
Well, something that we also want to just throw in there with Houston that you had brought up, they have a grand total of 1 quad 1 win this entire season, just by looking at that also. We wanted to just take a peek at that just because they're 10-1 quad 2 wins, quad 1 wins at one point. They did win against Memphis. I believe it was 71-53 at one point. They're 1-4. They lost against Wisconsin, Alabama, SMU, and Memphis. So that was definitely something if they couldn't, they eventually got in and whatnot. Yeah. So
I forgot about Illinois too. I mean, Illinois could win the whole damn thing.
Kofi Coburn past the Mocs.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, Kofi Coburn. I mean, Jesus. The South is loaded. It's just loaded.
Yeah, absolutely. Upset Central written all over quadrant 1. We'll see what happens there. Guys, let's keep moving forward down the right side of the bracket and moving into the Midwest region. Let's take a peek now at the Creighton Blue Jays, who, as we brought up, both Josh and I, what Creighton has done this season has really been remarkable, because a lot of people following the departure of Marcus Zagorowski, who now plays here actually on Long Island for the Long Island Nets in the G League, they kind of wrote him off a little bit. And, not in the preseason coaches poll in the Big East, but, they wrote them off in terms of being a tournament team. They didn't think it would happen, and all of a sudden, Greg McDermott, he finds a whole bunch of role players that really have come into their own. Trey Alexander, Ryan Hawkins. They still had Ryan Kalkbrenner as well. Ryan Nimhard, who broke his wrist over at St. John's. We continuously bring them up, but they just, there's a lot of things that I guess happened against them that we speak about. But 22-11, Creighton went this season, and they will be going up against San Diego State in looks like the 8-9 game. Am I correct? Yeah, that is the 8-9 game, and Creighton is the 9 seed in the Midwest region. They will be going up against the winner of Kansas, Texas Southern, or Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, the Islanders. Mike, start with you here with Creighton. What we've seen with Greg McDermott and also Ryan Hawkins to the D2 transfer, something pretty cool to see as well.
Yeah, I think it's been really. I think Greg McDermott not that it's been different than other years, but I think he's, especially this year more than others, put on a coaching masterclass. Being able to take a team, a couple of experienced guys, but a lot of other role players or a lot of freshmen, and elevate them to number 4 in the conference, went all the way to the Big East Championship. Did a lot of it toward the end of the season, continuing to solidify their resume without their star freshman point guard and Ryan Nemhard, and Alexander filled in beautifully. So they've really done a good job to get to where they are. I think this game against San Diego State is going to be one that if you really like defensive basketball, you can tune into this one. I think we haven't brought up Ryan Cockbrenner, who was the Big East Defensive Player of the Year, was absolutely fantastic in and around the rim. Had a pretty solid Big East championship game as well, despite the loss. But he's had a fantastic year for Creighton, the big 7-footer. I think it's going to be a battle of defense in that 8-9 game. Should be a really interesting one. But Creighton, what a fantastic year they've had.
Other names too, Jake Zimmer, that we have not brought up: Arthur Kaluma, Alex O'Connell, the Duke transfer as well. Just so many names that really the country, they have to know who this Creighton team is, because despite everything that happened last season with Zagorowski no longer being there and really a big change of the guard out in, I guess we'll use John Rothstein's analogy again, the middle of America, out in Omaha, there is a completely different roster, same coaching staff, but also keep in mind, remember at one point also, there was one decommit from some comments that Greg McDermott made, and there was a lot of people, again, writing off Creighton, saying that, well, this is the start of something, that's going to be trending downward, and we don't know if Greg McDermott will be able to recapture that magic or anything along those lines, or really another trip to the Big East tournament final. And looks like he did. He did pretty well, and unfortunately he fell against Villanova 54-48. But really an amazing season nonetheless.
It really goes to Mike's point to show you how good of a coach McDermott is.
Yeah.
You look at the lineup last year with Zagorowski, Mitch Ballock, who was one of the best three-point shooters in the nation, in my opinion, last year.
Yep.
You had Denzel Mahoney, who locked it down at the small forward. Damian Jefferson, who played a solid 4. And then Christian Bishop, who sought greener pastures. He's over at Texas this year now, too. So there is not a single starter back for Creighton. And what did he do? He strung it together. He challenged guys to step up. He challenged Ryan Hawkins to step up. Nemhard, look at the year he was having before his injury. And then even as recently as the tournament, Arthur Kaluma wasn't necessarily, the go-to guy before the Big East tournament, where he had a pair of good games in that tournament too. So Kaluma, I'm really impressed with him. I think he's going to be a guy that, if he does well, you might be looking at Creighton and saying, wow, that he might have been the X factor against someone like San Diego State and potentially even someone like Kansas. Not at all what I'm suggesting. I think I have Kansas getting out of there, but I think Creighton's the committee rewarded them by giving them a 9, in my opinion. You could have just totally counted them out, had them at a 10 or 11, if they didn't make that run of the Big East championship. They're a good team. They're better than what the record says. Happy for those guys too. They're going to be a good team next year as well.
Josh Adams, is this an upset candidate, this 8-9 game?
No, I have San Diego State taking Creighton in this one on my bracket. Just checked it to make sure. Yeah, I do have San Diego State. My main reason is that the San Diego State's the number 2 team in the nation in defense. They only allow 57.7 points a game.
Yeah,
that's tough. That's a tough draw in Fort Worth. I expect a lot of Creighton fans to make that trip. That's not too far from Omaha, if my geography is correct. What you guys have been saying is absolutely right. The job that McDermott's done this season, Joey, I know you and I touched on it.
Yeah.
And, the fact that McDermott, in the 9 years that they've been in the Big East, have made the Big East tournament championship 4 or 5 times now. I think it's, what was it, 4 to 9 now? It's now 5 out of 11. I mean, this team is just fantastic. It's like they just plug in these guys. And I appreciate the Alex O'Connell shout out, because I was like, these guys keep mentioning all these players, and I think there was a little Duke hate not bringing up Alex O'Connell, who had 18 points in their semifinal game in the Big East.
Channeling our inner Jaden Daly.
Yeah, I understand. But I think it's more or less probably a little East Coast bias on my part that I don't pay, obviously when they play St. John's and Seton Hall, I pay attention to Creighton. But the job that McDermott does year in and year out in Omaha speaks volumes. And I expect them to continue, especially with Nemhard coming back next year.
Yeah. And you know what, though? The best thing, though, that Jake brought up, though, was the fact that not one starter is going to be starting in the next game. Not a single one. And they still came out with 22 victories. It's truly amazing. Really is to see what Greg McDermott has done. And again,
hell of a coach.
Yeah,
he's hell of a nice guy too.
He's put everything together. Really amazing stuff to see. And again, as you brought up, Josh, they're going up against the number two team in rebounding, as you said, right?
Defense.
Yeah, exactly.
The points allowed 57.7, I think it is. Second in the nation, I believe.
23.8. That game will be happening on Thursday.
Yeah.
And of course, as we did say, the winner will be playing either Kansas, Texas Southern, or Texas A&M, Corpus Christi. But we expect Kansas to come out of that, and it could be a fun Creighton Kansas matchup, or even a San Diego State Kansas matchup. We'll see what goes on there. But guys, let's move down the bracket just a tiny bit more here on the Midwest region, and let's go to, of course, Rhode Island and the Providence Friars. They, of course, had a tough go against what was it actually against Creighton? They went on, or rather, Creighton went on a 31-2 run. 31-2 run in the Big East tournament. And something that we touched upon, Josh, is that, in close games, 15-2, they've won by, I think it's like single digits. Jake Zimmer, you can either attest to that or please correct me if I'm wrong. But Jake, I want to start with you here, since you're all about the Providence Friars and you cover them as well. This is a game that's going to be going on pretty much in Providence's backyard, out in Buffalo at the KeyBank Center, home of the Buffalo Sabres. They're going to be taking on the 13th seed, South Dakota State. And for a lot of folks that we've heard from so far all over social media, a lot of people have the Providence Friars getting upset in this contest because of what they have seen with this Providence team down the stretch. Things looked okay pretty much throughout the whole season. They went 25-5. Al Durham at the last couple of minutes against Butler, he goes 0 for 7, and he gets that go-ahead 3-point shot, which is great. But you can't afford to not show up against South Dakota State like how you did against Creighton.
Here's the thing, and I'll be going over this, oddly enough. I'm scouting out for folks in the South Dakota State media world to chat with about this tomorrow. The beat writer for the Jackrabbits this year is a gentleman named Matt Zimmer.
Oh, my goodness.
So we'll break it here. We'll be talking to him tomorrow night, just to chat about the matchup and all that good stuff. It was funny. I sent him a message. I said, "Hey, you got an awesome last name. I got nothing but respect for it." And he responds with, "Hey, I'm assuming people call you Zim too. So here you go, Zim." So I made a friend from South Dakota State. I will not tolerate Jackrabbit slander from this moment on. Here's the thing about San Diego, I keep thinking San Diego State. Here's the thing about South Dakota State. They are one of the best offensive teams in these 50 United States. They are the best three-point shooting team in the nation. They shoot 44%. 44% from downtown. That's incredible. The next team up is Colgate, and they're at 40%. They're a full 4 points better than the next team in that department. And it's not just threes, right? They've going down the line, they shoot 56% from 2, right? They make their free throws. They steal a lot of or they hold on to the ball, I should say. I don't know. This is an area that if Providence doesn't address it quickly in terms of clamping down on defense, we could be looking that this game gets into the 80s or 90s. And that, I'm just going to say it, is not somewhere that Providence wants to be, in my opinion. KenPom even has the score at 77-75. That is way too high for a normal Providence game. Those over-unders, you come in at like Oh, man, a lot less than 149, right? Is my math correct? No, it's 152, that over-under right now. So,
52.
Providence usually, they get to 70, they're going to win the game the way they play defense. I'm not so sure that's a territory they want to be in if they have to go into a shootout and, constantly be trying to keep up with the tempo. So that's just something you're going to have to look for. Now, on paper, there's no one to guard Nate Watson. So, is this a big game opportunity for Watson? I am the first to agree with all the Friar fans in my mentions. There is no one to guard Nate Watson. I'll agree. I think their tallest starter, oh man, I just had this up. I don't even think they have anyone over 6'8" on their team. So that could be a recipe for disaster. So South Dakota State wins this game if they run and they make their shots. Providence wins it if they play good defense and Nate Watson does well. That's simple.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what Nate Watson did in their loss, and if I'm not mistaken, I think he completed maybe 2 shots from the floor, 2 shots in the paint, and then I think he had a couple of free throws as well. Nothing that stood out, and he was effectively shut down by Creighton in that contest. And I believe it was Al Durham who had, I think it was 17. He led Providence with, I believe, 17 or 18 points in that game. And when you have essentially every soul shut down for Providence, with the exception of Al Durham, how frightened are you, Mike Szabo, for Providence, for Friar Nation, that regardless of the quote-unquote home court advantage, since you're only playing in Buffalo, which, Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, that's maybe a 6-hour drive, 7-hour drive from
I got Google Maps open. What is it, the Key Bank Center? So I'm sitting about a half mile away from the Dunkin' Donuts center currently. From this point, it's 6.5 hours.
So 6.5 hours. Thank you to Jake Zimmer and Google Maps Assist as well. Regardless of it being in their backyard, because South Dakota State, you actually have to get on a flight. Does this have upset written all over it?
I think there's potential for it. I think Jake makes a good point with the pace of play. I think if South Dakota State really gets out fast, I think Providence can. It really runs. I think Providence is in trouble. I think over the last couple of weeks, whether it's been through the Big East tournament or the last couple of weeks of the regular season, I think teams have shown that Providence without Al Durham or slowing Al Durham down is a very vulnerable team. And I think that's going to be an issue in the tournament. I think teams are going to look at him a little bit more. Certainly the guard matchup is going to really be intriguing in this game, but I think this is a very different team and a very vulnerable team. If Al Durham's slowed down or controlled a bit in this game, if he's held scoring wise, I think this team is a little bit vulnerable in that situation.
Josh, we got a chance to chat about the games that Providence did not play in this season, and a lot of folks on Twitter, which obviously we've said multiple times, for their opponents is a cesspool. Why? Because you have people fighting with each other about, well, Providence, they are the regular season champs with an asterisk. Why? Because they didn't play 3 quality games that should have been played due to COVID. They did not play at Seton Hall. They didn't play against UConn, and they also did not play against Creighton. 3 big teams that they did not go up against that could have been against them this year. And saying that maybe a 4 seed might just be a little high for Providence, who did not play in those 3 games.
Is this to me?
Yep, that is to you, Josh. Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, it's got a little chop.
No, we definitely have some chip chop from you, Josh.
Oh, we got a couple of uhs there, right, Jake? We hear that.
I've got that.
Am I there?
Yep, we got you loud and clear.
Okay. Well, I would add on to that the whole Providence missing those games scenario is that they also played Seton Hall when Seton Hall had 6 players coming right off of a COVID pause at the Dunkin' Donuts Center as well. So you can add on that game as well. Your record is what it says it is. I mean, all these close wins, they're still wins. I think the one thing that may benefit Providence in the NCAA tournament is that they are kind of getting away from the Big East, and a lot of NCAA tournament games are by and large close games. And what does Providence do? They win close games. I mean, it is what it is. And the fact that it was brought up that the spread here is very, for a 4-13 matchup is very, close. It says how good the Jackrabbits are, but it also, when you see who the Jackrabbits played, they lost to Alabama, the 14th ranked team. They lost to them by 27 points, I believe. I think it was 107 to 85 or something along those lines. So 22 to 23 points. Buffalo isn't exactly the backyard, as Jake pointed out. I mean, New York's a long state, but there's going to be plenty of Providence fans there. I see them getting past South Dakota State, but they're going to lose to Iowa in the next game. So this is going to be – they're not leaving Buffalo. I have Iowa, going far. I'm not going to give it away, but they're going to lose to Iowa. So Buffalo's going to be it for them. But they'll beat South Dakota State. South Dakota State's never seen Nate Watson. You know what I mean? Like, Nate Watson's going to slow this entire game down. And, the guard play with Bynum and Horford. Providence is really good player. Minaya on defense. I mean, they're going to slow they're good enough that they can slow. South Dakota State is not going to dictate the pace of this game. Providence will dictate the pace of this game because they have the players to do that, But going from there, crystal ball, they're not leaving Buffalo. They're going to lose the next round.
Now, I'm going to ask our entire panel this. Despite the numbers that Jake threw out to us regarding the 44% three-point shooting from South Dakota State, does stuff like that make you wonder, in addition to some of their woes from just a few days ago? Was it where they were playing 2 straight games and they just didn't wake up? They didn't make it? Or is this something, a cause for concern where, defense really has to stay tight? They, might not be able to defend the 3. They might not be able to defend some of their sharp shooters. Does anyone want to take that?
I think they have the defense to be able to guard against that. I mean, Josh mentioned Minaya. I think he's one of the better defenders around the country. I don't think he gets enough credit for it. Yeah. I think you got great guards in Bynum and Durham that will dictate the pace of this game. And as long as you slow down the game, I think there'll be less defense for them to do, less space for those shooters to get open. And then Nate Watson will do his work down low.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we'll see what he can do. Nate Watson, of course, trying to get back into the double-digit category, and in all facets of his game, go up against the South Dakota State team that, again, a lot of pundits have as a potential, one of the biggest upset potentials in this entire field of 68. Guys, let's keep on moving forward here, and let's go into the upper left quadrant of the bracket, and we will go to, of course, UConn's the Huskies and Danny Hurley's team going back to the NCAA tournament for the second time in a row in the Big East. They played last year against Maryland. They were upset by them. And then now this year they're going to be going up against New Mexico State in the 5-12 contest. Josh Adams, we'll start with you. We heard from Danny Hurley. We heard from or we've seen what they've been able to do. Again, some missed opportunities by Adama Sanogo, but we did discuss that. Obviously, everyone is human. The offense runs through him. What do you see here with this UConn contest?
This, to me, is a no-brainer. UConn's going to roll over New Mexico State. UConn, to me, is a scary team in the NCAA tournament this year. And as much, I looked into New Mexico State, and they're pretty much a one-man band with Teddy Allen. who's averaging 19.3 a game and 6.6 rebounds a game. UConn, again, Sanogo, RJ Cole, Wadley. Again, we talked about Jackson, the Swiss Army knife player that UConn has, who's a player like him is just absolutely essential to having a tournament run. UConn's going to roll here. It's in Buffalo. I mean, this is a no-brainer to me. They'll win this game by 15 points.
Well, Jake Zimmer, obviously another one that has his eye on UConn at points too. What do you see with this UConn team? Anything different from the from what Josh said, where this 5-12 game is one of those that is not on a lot of pundits' upset area?
There's just so much talent when you see a guy like Adama Sanogo that comes in, and I know we talked about this last year a bunch, Joey, but when Adama Sanogo's healthy, he's one of the best big men, I'd say, at the very least in the Big East, and you can throw him in the national conversation as well.
Yeah.
He's grown a lot. He's becoming a very appealing pro prospect over these next couple of years. And I think the kid is now learning how to win big games, which is what he needs to do. This is no exception. This is a tournament game. I think UConn rolls past New Mexico State. Interestingly enough, I have Vermont getting past Arkansas in this next round. So I think Vermont and UConn will have the chance to square off. And I think, you throw UConn on paper against the Catamounts and they roll over them again too. So I think all signs point to a Zags and UConn Sweet 16 here in the Western Quadrant.
Well, obviously something that I know a lot of Seton Hall fans don't want to hear, but Adama Sanogo potentially turning into a pro prospect. We know all about that story, Josh. Mike Szabo, with UConn and New Mexico State, again, I don't know really how much more to add here with this is RJ Cole's last ride, Tyrese Martin as well, Isaiah Whaley as well. This has potentially a UConn Zag Sweet 16 matchup. What do you see?
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing that makes UConn really dangerous is we look at all these teams across the brackets and we'll pick out one or two guys or one or two elements of the game that the other needs to really shut down in order to prevail. With UConn, they don't have that one guy. They have multiple guys that you got to be careful about that can go out and win them a game. You got RJ Cole, great guard there, who closing situation, you can be able to put the ball in his hands, set a couple of screens for him. He can make some plays. Most of what UConn wants to do runs through Adama Sanogo. We just ran through him as a fantastic big. Isaiah Whaley's one of the better defensive players in the Big East, a great shot blocker. Andre Jackson's a guy who just goes out there and wants to destroy every basketball rim that he can whenever he gets a chance. He's fantastic, can shoot a three, is a really great athlete all around for UConn. I think it can sometimes be a real X factor for them. Tyrese Martin, they're just really well-rounded. They don't have that one guy. They're just really well-rounded all together as a team and have some great depth. And their setting, I don't think it's a Danny Hurley thing, but I think it's always been kind of set in the UConn culture of always being a great rebounding team, and that always bodes well in a tournament setting, whether it was the conference tournament or now here in the national tournament.
Yeah, and also another thing that you bring up, obviously, is their depth too. Someone that can give them quality minutes as well. May not put up all the shots, but can get them down when he needs them. Is Tyler Polley as well? He can get really any shot off, and we saw it a couple of times. 2 quality threes against Seton Hall. It happened, and he got six quality points off of 2 triples in that contest that effectively took down Seton Hall. Wasn't the turning point of the game, but again, when you need those 2 threes, there's no doubt that Polley can do it. So multiple weapons that Danny Hurley can turn to, and as Josh did say about the one-man band for New Mexico State, it's not going to really work out for them that well. Moving down I-95 and going towards Rutgers. This is the appearance of the year for Rutgers. And why, folks? Because they had a disastrous start to their season. They lost to DePaul. They lost to I can't even think of a whole bunch of teams, but there's plenty that come off the top of a lot of folks' heads.
Lafayette, UMass, Minnesota, Northwestern, Adamant.
And at one point, Jake, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong again, I do remember, and I think Josh might have been there as well, we were at Seton Hall when UMass beat Rutgers. And I remember hearing, I don't remember who it was from, but that was a, quote, rock bottom loss by Rutgers. And all of a sudden, they turn it around. They take down these top teams, Purdue for one. Listen, Steve Peichel, again, use another Rothstein example, tough as nails. But, for what he's been able to do in turning this team around, he can't get it done on the road. But in Piscataway, they're a completely different team, Jake.
I agree. You're going at their spreads, and I can tell you exactly where you guys were. It was the UMass loss. Hold on. No, it was – oh, man, who'd they play? It was Monday, November 22nd. Lafayette.
Maybe it was that one. Okay.
Lafayette loses – or excuse me, Rutgers loses to Lafayette, and you guys are watching Seton Hall lose to Ohio State.
Yeah.
That sound right? Something like that.
Could be.
Actually, no, that doesn't even check out.
No, we were no.
That was a Thanksgiving tournament.
Yeah, Josh and I were together that night. So I don't know. There were evidently a few rock bottom losses for Rutgers here. Yeah. So, this is a different team. You look at what happened to Rutgers these past couple of years. Again, a couple of guys leave, and of course, how could you do it without Peter Kiss, who's carving it up at Bryant? But this was a year that Peichel had to challenge guys like Ron Harper and Geo Baker and say, what am I going to get out of you, basically, your last year? And it took him a bit, but finally they're living up to that challenge, right? I think Ron Harper looks the best he's looked in any year over his career. Cliff Amoria is getting some good burn. This team has been so competitive in a conference where you simply can't screw up. The Big Ten is full of these titans, right? And they'll eat you alive if you don't have your A game. So inside Piscataway, they've been excellent. Who did they beat at home? Man, Michigan State, Ohio State, Illinois. They have a win at home. Penn State. Well, yeah, they're in the bottom of the barrel, but and then
Purdue.
Purdue. Yep. They've got a win at home against Iowa, too, 48-46. That's a grinder of a win that's under 100 points. So this team knows how to win games. Took them a while, but they should fare up nicely here.
Yeah, and they're going on – today's Monday. They'll be going up on Wednesday in the Western region, first four, Rutgers and Notre Dame. Josh, Rutgers, Notre Dame, is there anything pretty about this game at all?
No. It's as gritty as probably Dayton is. I've driven through Dayton, but I've never stayed in Dayton. It's probably as gritty as that city is. Both these teams are. Mike Bray, this is a great coach. Notre Dame had a pretty good year. It's kind of surprised they ended up in this first four thing, but I guess that just shows what a down year the ACC had, because Notre Dame was second in the ACC. The net rankings, Notre Dame's 52. I believe Rutgers is 78. So
yes,
on paper, Notre Dame should be winning this game, but both these teams are relatively both have slow-paced offenses. This is going to be a really, these are two really good coaches going at it in Peichel and Bray. The thing is, in my bracket, I have Rutgers making a considerable run, and something about
really,
yeah. Well, I tell you, I'm being around here, you see Ron Harper Jr. and make these miraculous last second shots, and Geo Baker, and they seem like they've been here forever, but they really haven't. So I think Rutgers prevails in this one, and I guess we'll go on from there. But yeah, on paper, Notre Dame probably should win this game. But again, I wouldn't bet against Steve Peichel and this group, especially the Geo Baker and Ron Harper Jr. And I think they'll prevail here. I got the confidence in the Scarlet Knights, and this is not my New Jersey bias, by the way. I just think this is a special group, and this is their last run. I mean, they'll bring it. They'll bring it this on
now.
Tomorrow.
Again, is it? But is it scary though, Mike Szabo, that they have such a tough time playing outside of the friendly confines of Jersey Mike's Arena?
Yeah, I don't know if we'll ever get used to that one for right away. It's strange that they haven't been as good on the road, but they built what we will call the Rack into an absolute fortress. I think this is just a different team, regardless their struggles on the road, at home. I think they've just turned a corner this season, and listen, I see them making a bit of a run. 9 out of the last 10 years in the NCAA tournament, a first 4 team has won multiple games. I think Rutgers is a candidate to do that. They're just playing at a different level right now. The motivation, as Josh was alluding to, with Ron Harper, Geo Baker, the like, one last run after making the Sweet 16 last year. They also, I mean, Caleb McConnell's a fantastic defender. Yeah. One of the more underrated in the country. Really, really strong defender. I like Rutgers to beat Notre Dame and then beat Alabama.
Whoa. Oh, okay. So we know where Josh is where his head is at. Also, it seems as if that is the case. Now, before we get to our next team that we'll cover, which is Marquette, Jake, do you agree with those two guys?
I can see it, and I think honestly, I'm taking whoever. I can't believe I'm about to say this. I'm taking whoever wins this game to beat Alabama. Every ounce of me wants to say they'll beat Texas Tech too, but I just don't think so. I think Mark Adams is cooking up something special in Lubbock this year, and I don't think he'll be denied until he meets his date with Destiny in the Sweet 16 for Coach K's retirement tour.
Oh my goodness! Well, that's. I mean, hey, listen. If I guess all of us have see, I only have Rutgers going into the second round and then getting pummeled by Texas Tech. That's really where it comes down to. But that would be, I guess, their mini run, if you will. Yeah. But speaking of mini runs, though, of course, Shaka Smart, as we brought up early on with VCU, there has been some chatter that maybe, well, Shaka Smart could potentially win Coach of the Year. Oh, but wait a second. Ed Cooley completely took that away and smashed him over the head with it once he went on a 25-5, one of the best seasons of his career. But Shaka Smart had one heck of a beginning of a season to start off his Marquette tenure. And he went 19-12, which, again, a lot of folks had them pretty much written off as well this season. Justin Lewis came into his own. Plenty of other players have come into their own. And Marquette is dancing. They are the number 9 seed, and they're going up against UNC. UNC is 24-9 this season, and as we said, Marquette is 19, or they went 19-12. They were then taken down by Creighton in the Big East tournament on Thursday afternoon, this past Thursday afternoon. And Josh Adams, I want to start with you because you brought up obviously about what Shaka did a few years ago when he was at VCU, first 4 to the Final Four, or really I think made a run. And now he's got another chance to do something that I think no one would have thought. Again, Marquette wasn't even supposed to be in a conversation for the big for the national tournament, and here they are.
Well, yeah, Shaka did a hell of a job this year. They honestly I'm disappointed because I actually had them in my predictions to be in the Big East tournament final, and the fact that they lost to Creighton was surprising. I really thought Shaka would have Marquette ready to go, but again, they're a young team. And Justin Lewis is phenomenal, but they are young, and frankly, I'm not expecting much. Carolina's a veteran team. They've been there before. Obviously, a new coach with Jair Davis. But if you're buying stock next year, this year, next year, moving forward, Marquette with Shaka Smart, they're going to be a team to watch. But Carolina, I think with Armando Becad, averaging basically a double-double, they're going to be a tough out. So I got UNC winning, unfortunately. No bias.
Jake, do we remember when UNC lost to Pitt? A lot of folks had turned on the sirens and said, uh-oh, we've got a mini problem here down at UNC. And all of a sudden, they're 24-9. They're the 8 seed. Do you see anything maybe that Marquette could do, or is this just a one-sided affair for UNC?
I think there's an element, sure, Marquette's a talented team. I think now's not their time to beat UNC. I mean, this is just an awful draw, guys, if we're being serious with each other, right? Marquette could have pulled Boise State at 8. They could have pulled Seton Hall at 8 too, which I think is a better draw, ironically enough. And then San Diego State, I think in theory, obviously that Seton Hall one would never happen, but all of those 8 seeds are better draws than what they're getting with North Carolina. Listen, North Carolina is a very, very tough 8 seed. They're a good basketball team. What's Hubert Davis done this year? He's silenced a lot of the people that said, oh, it would take a few years. Very similar to, Shaka and a few of the other coaches that we had been talking about previously on the show here today as well. So, I think Armando Bacot is just a force to be reckoned with. I don't think he matches up well necessarily from a Marquette standpoint with their big guys. So for that reason, I think I'm going to tip my hat to Marquette, wish them well, and thank them for beating the crap out of Providence this year. And I will return the favor with them losing in the first round. So it's been great. Thanks for nothing, Shaka.
Yeah, and again, actually, Josh and I, we discussed on our last recap on the Instant Reaction, we discussed about how there was a question that was asked in the press conference room of the Big East tournament when Providence was absolutely dominated by Creighton about that 32-point loss to Marquette. Can you get your team back? What was the message that you had said? And I'll never forget, Josh, we were talking about this, is that, were you in that locker room with us? That's a fantastic question. Yes, I pretty much said the exact same thing. So you never know. We'll see what happens there. If I don't know if that could happen with Shaka on the other side, if they can, if I guess Shaka can be ready. But Mike, for you though, with UNC and Marquette, and looking on the Marquette side though, as Josh did say, they're a young team. Darryl Marcel, one of the older players on the team. You've got plenty of players that are freshmen. Cam Jones, Greg Elliott, redshirt junior, and of course Justin Lewis. He's only a redshirt freshman. One of the Big East the Big East most improved player. He was named to that award a couple of days ago. Really good stuff for Marquette, but this is probably it for them, right? Or do you see something else?
No, I think this is it for them. I think they've had a great year. They've had a great run this year in the first year under Shaka Smart, but I just think they're completely overmatched against North Carolina. I mean, they outside of Darryl Marcel and Justin Lewis, their scoring is inconsistent. So interesting to see how that will show up against North Carolina. I think outside of all the tactics and strategy here, I think the committee had a little knew what they were doing with this 8-9 game, all the storylines involved. I believe old pal Dawson Garcia going up against the old Marquette in UNC. This is a rematch of the 1977 national championship game, the last game that Al McGuire coached his legendary career at Marquette. So a little bit of old storylines there, but no, I think North Carolina rolls in this one and sets up an interesting matchup with Baylor.
Well, I mean, listen, it's going to be definitely tough for whoever comes out of that 8-9 game, UNC or Marquette. Chances are they'll be playing Baylor. But now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, we'll leave it at that as we bring you our Final Four predictions here. And I want to start with Josh Adams here. Josh, let's see what you've got in your Final Four predictions.
And bear in mind, I came in second in ESPN 2 years ago. I won't brag about that.
Okay.
Yes, won $500.
And I got to ask, out of how many people?
I think it was neighborhood of 2.5 million.
Wow! Whoa! Seriously?
Yeah.
Overall?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. It was 2017.
Oh my
It was
God.
Lenardi's bracket challenge.
No wonder why you didn't remember TCU won the NIT that year.
Man, I feel
TCU wasn't making you rich.
Right, exactly. But so I'll dine out on that for the rest of my life. But since then, previous and then after, but somehow. All right, my final four out of the West, I have Gonzaga.
Yeah.
The East, I have Purdue coming out of the East. The South, I have Arizona. And the Midwest, I have Iowa. And I have that's my final four. I don't know if we're going to do separate national championship. But that's
Do it. Go ahead. Here we go.
My national championship, it's chalk. Yeah, they got Gonzaga versus Arizona with Arizona winning. With Arizona being the national champion this year.
What a storyline that would be. Gonzaga, Arizona, the student versus the master.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
That was Seth Davis's pick, too. Someone watched a little bit of ESPN before this bracket, I think.
I've also been to Arizona twice in the last 3 months. That may have done that.
Oh, come on. We're going to let this blatant bias on the show?
What can I say? I like Tucson.
Nice city.
Oh man, Jake Zimmer, what do you got on your Final Four prediction and your national championship prediction?
Final four. This is subject to change, folks. Let the record show. I am not liable for anything I am about to pick until Thursday.
Okay.
I sadly don't think Mark Few is gonna do it. He has to go up against a legendary coach out of the West who's just got destiny on his side and whose wife has Josh Adams' jacket. Let's not forget. Nikki Krzyzewski has the jacket.
She gave it back.
Okay, you did get all right. Well, that would have been cool if she took it.
I know it would have been, yeah.
But she's got the magic. Coach K's got the magic. Give me Duke out of the West.
Ooh.
The East, I do like Purdue as well, Josh. Baylor's a good team, but I think Matt Painter and Jaden Ivey are getting a little pissed off of losing to teams that they should beat. That being said, I have one of them in the Midwest, and that is the number 5 seed Iowa Hawkeyes.
Ooh,
We're on a freaking tear, gentlemen. You can't stop Jordan Bohannon. You can't stop all these guys. Keegan Murray. Oh, my goodness, what a year he's having. I'm still torn between what I'm going to do in the South. As it stands, I have Arizona. I think I want to switch it to the Villanova Wildcats, though.
Whoa!
Well, I've got Duke, Purdue, Villanova, and Iowa. No chalk, only whiteboards.
Oof.
I got Duke and Iowa in the championship. And Coach K is going to be putting on another ring.
Oh, check it out.
Everything I just said because I was born and raised to hate 3 teams. The Villanova Wildcats, the Syracuse Orange, and the Duke Blue Devils. And I picked Duke to win the championship here.
Oh.
Sad. I believe it. I don't think anything's going to
God's
stop
ear, Jake. There we go.
And dropped.
Well, I can tell you this much: when we do show Jaden Daly this clip, he's definitely not going to be happy about that you picked the legend St. Michael to come away with the national championship.
Jaden's entitled to his own very wrong opinion.
Yep.
Mike Szabo, what do you got in your Final Four prediction?
I'm going a little bit off the cuff here. I still haven't wrote out the entire bracket yet, so I'm going a little bit off my head. I like Gonzaga out of the West. I'm torn with Arizona. I think Arizona and Villanova will meet up in the Elite Eight. I think it will wind up being Arizona coming out of the South. I hate going with the 2 seed because 2 seeds are too high, but I do really like Auburn. Out of the Midwest. I do see what you guys are doing with Iowa, but I will go a little bit against the grain. So I do like Auburn. I think even Wisconsin may have a little bit of a run in them. But I'll take Auburn there in the Midwest. So we got Gonzaga, Arizona, Auburn, And then out of the East, I really like. I think UCLA can potentially make a run here. I like Kentucky as well. I'll take I don't want a rematch of last year's Final Four, maybe.
Yeah.
Gonzaga, UCLA, Arizona, and Auburn. We'll go with that.
Could be
subject to change, just like Jake said, though.
That's my man. Asterisk.
Lots of time to change, of course, ladies and gentlemen. It's only Monday here.
Who you got? Who you got, man?
Well, hold on. We're not done yet. So it's going to be in my Elite Eight, Gonzaga, Duke, and Mark Few is going to send Coach K home. That is it. Gonzaga in the Western region, they will head to the Final Four. It's going to be Baylor and Purdue in the Elite Eight, and it's going to be Scott Drew going back to the Final Four in his chase for redemption, not even redemption, of defending his national championship title, but he won't win it. On the other side, it's going to be Arizona and Villanova in the Elite Eight. I have Arizona coming out of the South. And in the Midwest, I've got Iowa and Wisconsin, because as Mike Szabo did say about Wisconsin, though, they could potentially go on a little bit of a run. But Iowa, listen, 39th year senior Jordan Bohannon will send Iowa to the Final Four, but it will be the way it looks here. It's going to be Gonzaga and Arizona. Arizona wins the national championship. That's where we are at right now. Well, ladies and gentlemen,
two Arizonas, a Duke, and Michael, who is yours? Who's going to win the national championship?
National.
You didn't say that.
I'll have Arizona too. Why not?
Ooh.
Okay. All right, that's fair. But
Wildcat party here.
You guys are. So who's buying me beer on Friday night when Arizona beats, or when Brian beats Arizona?
I will be the first.
Well, the good part is with Brian is they can say, "Well, we lost the eventual national champion, so what are we going to do?" You know what I mean?
That's the eventual national champion.
Exactly. It's the spin zone. You can't lose either way.
I mean, Arizona can say, "Wow, we did lose to the national champions in Bryant." That's okay.
That's true. It's true.
I mean,
Peter Kiss can throw a monkey wrench into this whole program here.
I mean, in this hypothetical situation, what would that be? The second time ever a coach would, in NCAA history, a coach would win a national championship in their first year as a head coach. I think it was done by Michigan in '77, but I'm blanking on his name. But I believe he was an interim head coach.
Yeah, Steve Fisher.
Yeah. Now Grasso's a fourth-year head coach. Sadly, can't take credit for that one. So I'm done entertaining more Brian scenarios for my own entertainment. I can't do it.
Just for the record, Steve Fisher beat Seton Hall in that national championship game. So that's a little basketball history lesson there for you folks. Yeah, he was an interim coach and beat Seton Hall on a very controversial last second foul call. Free throws.
Unbelievable. But
asking alumni about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do appreciate you taking some time watching us here on the Eastern Observer. Josh and Jake from College Hoops Digest, please let us know where we can follow you guys, and to please tell our audience where we could follow the two of you.
Yeah, keep up with us at NCAA Hoops Digest on Twitter. That features Josh and I a lot with a lot more contributors. All sorts of blogging, video content, and even, responsibly speaking, some wagering content as well. You can follow, I'm stealing your thunder, Josh, but you can follow Josh Describe on Twitter for you, right? And Jake Zimmer 12 for myself. Let me know what I forgot, Josh.
We're also doing a bracket contest, I believe.
Yes,
Jake?
we are. We're doing our bracket contest.
Cool. So look that up on Twitter, where I believe you can win some merch if you win our bracket. So everyone sign up and you can get our merch, which is, I can speak to it, is very high quality. And I've worn it constantly since November and it hasn't fallen apart. It's good stuff. It's good merch. So enter our contest, win our merch, represent
our merch.
The brand.
Doesn't break. It's good. It's very good stuff.
It's good merch.
Oh my goodness. Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, of course, if you're just joining us again, on the bottom, on the ticker, on the bottom line, you can definitely take a peek at all of the Twitter accounts and also the Instagram accounts and everything for College Hoops Digest. Ladies and gentlemen, for Josh Adams, Jake Zimmer, Mike Szabo, I'm Joey Jarzynka. For all of us here for Instant Reaction segment number 16, the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Group, we will see you next time and enjoy the NCAA tournament.